The child with no name, new expanded version. Before he ever touched a brush, Leonardo lived in the shadows of shame. In the tiny village of Vinci high in the Tuscan hills, he was born not into a family, but into a silence. His father, Ser Piero, did not lift him as a son. He was born outside of marriage. That meant no inheritance, no surname, no claim to legacy. Just Leonardo from Vinci. A geographical footnote. His mother, Caterina, no one truly knows her story. Some say she was a servant, others a peasant, others something darker. She vanished from his life early. Perhaps by force. Perhaps by choice. The boy was raised among strangers in his own bloodline. He saw the world not through play but through observation. He noticed how birds folded their wings. How people blinked before they lied. How light shifted across a stone wall. He spoke little. But he remembered everything. He sketched with charcoal before he could read. Drew maps of places he'd never seen. Built mechanical birds from wood and cloth. At 7 years old, he told a neighbor's daughter, "I think the sky is a machine. And God forgot to close it." They called him cursed, possessed, touched by madness. But no one ever called him ordinary. Florence, the mirror of fire. When Leonardo was barely 14, his father sent him to Florence, the beating, golden heart of the Renaissance. There he entered the workshop of Andrea del Verrocchio, a place of stone, sweat, pigment, and smoke. Other boys copied. Leonardo invented. When they painted shadows, he painted breath. When they studied proportion, he dissected faces with his eyes. He memorized how veins pulsed in the wrist, how tears clung to an eyelash. Verrocchio quickly realized, the boy was something else. Not just skilled, but terrifyingly awake. And yet, Leonardo was a ghost in the world of men. He was beautiful, too beautiful, slender, feminine, unsettling. His silence made people whisper. His notebooks, filled with anatomical drawings and backward script, made them fear. One day, while assisting on a painting of Christ, he added an angel. When the painting was unveiled, everyone stared at the angel. Verrocchio never painted again. The trial of the flesh. At 24, Leonardo was arrested. No one knows who accused him, only that he and 3 others were charged with sodomy. In Florence, sodomy was punishable by death, or public shaming, or exile. He was locked in a stone cell. The records say nothing about what happened in those nights. But when he was released, Leonardo never spoke of it again. He became more withdrawn, more secretive. He burned some of his early sketches. He moved his studio. He began writing exclusively in mirrored Latin. But his paintings changed. They became more intimate. Eyes more haunted. Bodies more ambiguous. His angels became androgynous. His saints too human. He painted the forbidden, not in acts but in emotion. In how hands almost touched. In how glances lingered too long. The church kept its distance. But patrons, especially the rich and powerful, began to pay attention. Leonardo had become dangerous. And that made him irresistible. Machines of heaven. Leonardo didn't believe in miracles. But he believed in the mathematics behind them. In his notebooks were thousands of designs. Self-propelling carts, tanks, parachutes, underwater machines. But they weren't just sketches. They were prayers. One day man will build what angels only imagine. He believed God was an engineer, and the universe, a device too complex to dismantle, yet too beautiful not to mimic. Some drawings were marked. This must fly. This could kill. This must never be built. In Milan he served the Duke not as an artist, but as a military engineer. But none of his machines were ever completed. His enemy wasn't failure. It was time. The Last Supper and the Wall That Died. Milan. A cold monastery hall, Santa Maria del Grazie. Leonardo began the Last Supper. But this wasn't a religious scene. It was a theatrical detonation. The moment right after Christ says, "One of you will betray me." The disciples weren't saints. They were terrified men. Peter clutching a knife. Judas holding a bag of coins. Thomas pointing upward, doubt etched in his hand. And Christ, alone in the center. Not holy, haunted. Leonardo didn't paint on wet plaster like others. He experimented with his own technique. And it failed. The wall began to decay within years. Just like his hope for permanence. The anatomy of the soul. At night, Leonardo visited hospitals. Sometimes morgues. He paid in silence. Took the body. Locked himself away. He dissected muscles. Measured skulls. Drew fetuses inside wombs. Whispered, "Where are you, soul? Where do you hide?" Sometimes he thought it lived in the heart. sometimes the brain, sometimes in a wound no one could see. He did it not for medicine, but for art. Because he wanted to paint not appearance, but truth. A good painter paints not what he sees, but what lies behind the eyes. His anatomical drawings weren't science. They were confessionals. Mona Lisa, or the smile that lied. He painted her for years. At first, she was the wife of a wealthy merchant. But then something changed. He couldn't stop. In her smile, he saw everything he could never understand. His mother. His forbidden loves. The idea that happiness is just a mask. He carried her everywhere. Slept near her. And they say he spoke to her at night. She was not a portrait. She was a mirror. And when you look at Mona Lisa, she's already looking at you. The French king in the final sketch. He left Italy in silence. By 1516, Leonardo was no longer a wonder. He was old. Slower. His hands trembled. His students had left. The Pope no longer called. The courts were filled with younger, faster names. But across the Alps, a king still believed in ghosts. Francis I of France, young, curious, obsessed with genius, sent a carriage and letters. Come. Live in Amboise. Paint or not. Speak or not. Just be. Leonardo crossed the mountains in winter carrying 3 things. A locked chest of notebooks. A half-finished sketch of a drowned man. And Mona Lisa. He arrived frail but still burning. Francis called him father. Leonardo, with a crooked smile, replied, "Then why do I feel like the child?" In Chateau du Clos-Luce, he wandered the gardens for hours. Spoke to trees. Studied bird bones. And in the evenings, sketched. One night, a servant found a new image on his desk. A figure. No face. No arms. Just ribs twisted into wings. Underneath. This is the body that tried to become light. Legacy of the unfinished. When he died, on May 2, 1519, it was quiet. No storm. No crowds. Just a bed, a candle, and perhaps a royal hand holding his own. They say his final words were, "I have offended God and man by not finishing what I began." But how do you finish a universe? He left behind thousands of pages. Drawings of the human heart. Dreams of cities that clean themselves. Maps of impossible rivers. And machines that bled philosophy. But no one knew what to do with them. Some pages were burned. Others stolen. Many forgotten in trunks. Centuries passed. Dust piled. The world moved on. Until the world caught up. Engineers found the helicopter in his scrolls. Surgeons traced his drawings of arteries. Artists stood before the Last Supper and cried. And in the Louvre, Mona Lisa watched them all. Quiet. Knowing. Eternal. Epilogue, the man who never slept. They say Leonardo never slept more than 2 hours at a time. That he dreamed with his eyes open. He lived not in centuries, but in seconds stretched by thought. He was not just a man. He was a question the world never stopped asking. What if we could see what he saw? What if beauty was a machine? What if silence had a blueprint? He never finished his books. Never married. Never bowed to a single god. But he observed, dissected, forgave, and dared. And maybe that was enough. Because some men do not die. They turn into possibilities. And when you stand beneath the ceiling of the sky, or open the pages of a book no one understands, or stare too long at a face in a painting, you'll feel it. The itch, the breath, the ghost, and somewhere Leonardo is still drawing.